Hi, this is Hear the Raw. I am Paul Schneider. As always, you can find us on most podcast platforms on Spotify, Amazon, Google, and most post podcast platforms wherever you get your podcasts from. Um, I've got my guest Nigel Skilton on with me today, who I'll introduce in a minute. Hi, Nigel.
Right.
But
Hi
before
there.
we start, I want to just say that it's worth mentioning that topics discussed on this podcast platform can be of a sensitive nature. Some very personal things are discussed, and it's just worth noting that, if you are sensitive to personal or very deep, yeah, information, just be warned when you listen to this podcast. Sorry, that's the first time I've covered that that caveat, so I've not got that very well, but I'll get it better next time. So, hi Nigel. Nigel is a larynx cancer survivor, and I'm going to let him tell his story. But Nigel, hi. Let's start with you telling us who you are.
Hi there. My name's Nigel Skilton. I live in the southeast of England. I'm 45. And in 2021, I was diagnosed with vocal cord larynx cancer.
Do you so, tell us about tell us about your family setup, Nigel, and your sort of work
Yep.
background or career, please.
Sure, yeah. So I'm married, I've got a wife and a daughter. My daughter's 10. I am actually an audio-visual installation engineer by trade. I have my own company. I supply labour to larger audiovisual companies for
Wow.
installing corporate, corporate and events audiovisual systems.
I've got a feeling we might know a few mutual business connections. Um,
Probably, yeah.
yeah, I was in telecoms for many years, and then in the latter years before I retired, I was in uh, well, providing engineers, and I actually and crept slowly into audiovisual
Right.
engineer installations and what have you. So we'll talk about that offline. But
Yeah.
first of all, thanks for coming on. So um, let's start with your cancer story.
Yep.
Um, what's always fascinating is people's story to the day of diagnosis. Talk us through the day that something was wrong or whatever occurred to diagnosis day. Talk us through that, Nigel.
So it started. It was around March 21. We were in the midst of lockdown and COVID and all of
Yes.
that craziness. And pretty much I lost my voice just completely out of the blue. I it was literally a case of I woke up and had a croaky voice for no reason. No other symptoms, no sort of pain or cold or anything like that. And didn't really think nothing of it. Went on for a few days. Didn't get worse, didn't get better. That sort of went on to a few weeks. Started thinking that maybe something wasn't quite right, but again, because you got no other symptoms or issues, no discomfort or pain or anything, like literally just a croaky voice, you kind of
Yeah.
don't, you kind of put it to the back of the sort of list. And obviously, because of the period we were in with COVID, going to the doctors wasn't that easy. So it got to about 3, 4 weeks, I suppose, and I ended up having a conversation with my sister-in-law, who's actually a speech therapist,
All right.
and the conversation came up. She asked me how long I'd had the croaky voice for, and I said it's been 3 or 4 weeks, and she said the same thing. Have you got any other symptoms? Is there any pain? Is there any this, that, or the other?
Yeah.
And then she just said, "Have you spoken to the doctor about it?" And I said, "Funnily enough, I'm literally at that point where I'm going to ring them." So I did, called the doctor, had a chat, and basically the doctor was really helpful. They said obviously because of what's going on, and because you've got no other symptoms, there's obviously something going on there. So I'm going to refer you to speech and language therapy.
That's very good of them. They normally,
Get out, yeah, ENT, etc. And she said to me at the time, she said, don't panic when the letter turns up because it's going to have the 2 week referral on it, because otherwise you might wait 6 to 8 weeks to see anyone.
pathway.
Yeah. So she said, obviously, when the letter arrives, it's going to say, cancer pathway, 2 week referral. Don't panic. Obviously, we're hoping that's not the
It was
case.
just to get you seen quicker.
It's
Yeah,
the quickest way to get you in. Yeah.
yeah.
So sure enough, 3 or 4 days later, a letter turned up, and I had an appointment the week after. I went into Croydon University Hospital and saw a guy there, done a camera into my nose, and said, yeah, there's a tiny little lump on one of your vocal cords. He said it's literally like smallest thing ever. And he said, what I'll do is I'll put you through to have a procedure where we'll remove some of it, test it, make sure there's nothing sinister going on.
Yeah.
He said I'll probably end up removing most of it anyway during that process because it's so small.
Right. Okay.
So we'll go from there. And funnily
How
enough,
was that biopsy process? How was the biopsy process?
So it was done under general anaesthetic, but the
Right.
funny thing was, like, I got a phone call from the pre-op team before I even left the hospital, because obviously even though everything was quite manic, quite a lot of the different sort of areas within the hospitals were also quiet because no one was there and things weren't happening because everything was COVID. So they rang me like straight away, and I think I literally got booked in for the procedure within like 4 days, something stupid like that. So I went and had that done. No issues, just put out for a couple of hours. And then I was told that they'll run the tests. If I don't hear anything straight away, then it probably will be a case that I'll just hear from speech and language therapy within 4 or 5 weeks. So went home, didn't think any more of it. Didn't hear anything straight away, which was a bonus.
Yeah.
And then I got a letter through after about 3 or 4 weeks, I think, saying, can you come to Croydon and see the team? So off I went, thinking everything was normal, that I was going to meet a speech therapist to help me start to get my voice sorted. Went into the room and saw the same doctor, who said, I'm ever so sorry, but we've run these tests a couple of times now, which is why it's taken a little bit of time to get back to you, but unfortunately it's come back as positive for cancer. So obviously that was the freight train come through the room.
Yes.
And yeah, that was it.
When was this, Nigel? What, in
So that
2021?
was March 2021, yeah.
So
So it was
it's really good to hear that you got seen really quickly during COVID.
Yeah,
The same,
yeah,
the
yeah.
same thing happened to me.
It was fast, yeah.
So, right, so they said it's cancer.
Yeah.
What happened next?
So next, they told me that it was very early and very small, not to worry, obviously, as they would do, and that I would be put forward for a course of radiotherapy
Right.
to look to treat the problem.
So you were told it was larynx cancer,
Yep.
and it was on what one? I don't know how. So excuse my naivety. Were you told it was on one of the cords or
So
in multiple places or?
they said from the biopsy there was the main lump that they'd seen originally. They said that there possibly could be a trace of one on the other cord, but it was really small, like if anything.
Right.
And obviously a element of it was removed at the time during the procedure. So I think the radiotherapy was then the idea that it was more treat what's remaining, cover the bases.
So the radiotherapy was administered to hopefully destroy all of the cancer on your larynx.
Yeah.
And how many weeks of
Yes.
treatment did you have?
So I, from there, I went to Royal Marsden in
Yeah.
Epsom.
Yeah.
Sorry, not Epsom, Sutton. Sorry,
Yeah.
Sutton, Royal Marsden in
Yeah.
Sutton. And I was put through 4 weeks, so it's 21 sessions of radiotherapy to my neck.
And how was
And
that?
even that was like, it was brutal, I think is probably the easiest way to describe it. Yeah, it wasn't fun. It wasn't fun at all. It's quite funny really, because I've, like, up until that point I'd never really been ill or sick or had any kind of like major sort of hospital related things. So quite an eye opener really, with regards to like medication and the whole process. Again, really fast. You know, I think I was booked into Royal Marsden by May, I think. So by
Within
the
two
time
months,
it had
yeah.
gone from like March to like turning up at Royal Marsden to start, yeah, a couple of months, if that. Had my mask done, fitting and
Yeah.
everything, and then off I went.
So tell me about your lifestyle, Nigel, before you were diagnosed. And were you a drinker? What was your diet like? Were you a smoker? Were you a
No,
party
so
boy? Were you?
when I was diagnosed, I was fairly good. In my past, obviously, as a younger man, I did used to smoke and drink and go out and do all the things that young people do. But I did stop. So I stopped smoking. I stopped smoking probably 15 years before that, and was in fairly decent shape. I decided, I think, when it was so before my daughter was born, around 2015. So my daughter was born in 2015. About the year before, I decided to kind of get into shape because we were planning to have a family, and I didn't want to be
A fat dad?
out of shape and
Yeah.
fat dad, yeah, basically. So I got into shape then. I got into not so much crazy stuff, but I just got into a bit of running and got fit, basically got as fit as I could then at the time. So I was okay, yeah. Obviously, COVID sent everyone into a craze of trying to be fit and doing stuff in their back garden because they had nothing else to do. But yeah, so I wasn't in bad shape, which I think probably helped, because part of the radiotherapy was, just trying to manage your body's response to that. Gaining weight, losing weight, going through that process. Not being able to eat. It's pretty brutal. So yeah, being in reasonable condition helped a lot.
Yes.
It helped me to get through it and being positive about it.
So it started. You started. So you've obviously had a laryngectomy. So
Since, yeah, yeah.
yeah. So
So
we'll come on to that in a minute.
yeah,
But um, it's quite widely known, although not widely known enough, that radiotherapy treatment on head and neck cancers is brutal.
yes,
Especially in the neck area where it involves the
yep,
throat. The effects of radiotherapy are wow. I mean, you said it yourself, it's brutal. Are you okay to
yeah,
talk us tell us how
yeah,
it really
sure, yeah,
went?
yeah.
Right,
It's
so talk me through
it's
week
good to
one to
know.
week two to week three.
Yeah.
Go on, go for it.
So started off, everything was fine. I had lots of consultations with the doctors, and it's quite interesting the way they describe what's going to happen, how it's going to feel, and you kind of think, yeah, okay, we'll see how we go. And they're very to the point. That I think it's good in a way because you kind of need to be prepared. It's no good them saying, "Oh, you'll be fine, you'll be all right." You'll get on with it. They're very much sitting you down. Right, this is going to be painful. This is going to happen. This is what you're going to need to do, etc. Because you need to be prepared for it because
Yes.
it comes on like you never believe.
Break that down, Nigel.
So
Break that down. Break that down.
yeah, so
Prepared
it
how?
so it starts off. So basically, the process as it's explained is the first 2 weeks will be fine, because there's no actual effect of the treatment as it's happening. It's what happens to your body during the process. It's what your body does as it's going. So week one, no real issues at all. The doctors explained to me that generally speaking, at the end of week two is when you'll start to experience the effects. And they did describe, obviously, you'd start getting pain and soreness, and you'll find that swallowing starts to become difficult. And funnily enough, on the Sunday of week two, I started feeling pain and discomfort. I spoke to the hospital. They were always on, always available to me to call. And they just explained, start taking paracetamol, start taking, whatever painkillers you can. And it got quite uncomfortable, like literally that night. So on the Monday, which was the first day of week three, I went in and spoke to my nurse, and she gave me some painkillers. I was doing quite big amounts of paracetamol, but the problem is you can only take so much of that.
And codeine?
So it started on the codeine, that's where it started. So she gave me some cocodamol tablets to take, which were like big dissolvable ones.
Yeah.
But the issue was within 2 days, I was finding, because you can still only take the same amount of that because it's still paracetamol based. You can only take it 4 times a day in certain quantities. So you were kind of chasing it then, because you take the edge off, and then you're literally sat there waiting for the 4 hours to tick by so you could take some more.
Yes.
And obviously the pain just starts to climb as you're waiting almost, and you're basically just chasing that next dose where you can take the edge off again.
Yes.
So I went back the next day and explained that it wasn't really helping. She said, no, that's completely fine. So they started me on they went straight through to morphine, which was like an oral dose of morphine. And they were like, the good thing with that is you can basically just take as much of it as you need to. So I switched to that. And it was another day or so on that, I suppose. But again, I was pretty much taking it most of the time. So I went back and they said, right, that's clearly not helping. So what we'll do is we'll start you on a patch. So I had a morphine patch then, which was, I'm trying to think what the dose was, something like 20 or 30 milligram patches or something like that. Which was effectively, I think I was taking they told me to take 7 milligrams in a syringe orally. And the patches were like 40 something, which was effectively like enough for like 3 days.
Wow.
And then they said, but you can continue taking the syringes as well on top of it if you need to. So they're like, put the patch on, that will take the edge off, and then when it starts to spike a little bit, you can just already take more. So take it off, and from that point, everything was just numb, basically. So that worked, which was good.
Very good.
But the issue was that sort of took the pain away, but you still had the discomfort because I then couldn't swallow very easily. Yeah. So eating went out the window, and it was into like liquid diet and things like that.
Did you have a tube fitted?
No, so I ended up not needing it. Luckily, I got tipped off because of the time frame. One of the nurses said to me before I started the radiotherapy, they said, if you can put any weight on before this starts, try and put on as much as you can, because you're going to lose loads. And obviously, if we can keep you above a certain threshold, then you won't need to have a feeding tube. So I literally ate what I could to try and gain a few pounds, but luckily I think I was a little bit bigger than anyway, so I was kind of right at the point, and I dropped. I got a feeling I dropped about 10 kilos over the process. And my nurse was like, you're literally like, when I got to the end of the 4th week, my nurse said to me, you're right on the cusp. She was like, if we can keep you here and not drop any more, then we won't need to do a feeding tube. Because once you get to week 4, it then kind of plateaus. And it's almost to the point, it's like the first 2 weeks are nothing. The second 2 weeks are rapidly downhill. Then once you finish the actual therapy itself, it stops, and then it will gradually start to, it will get better.
So a lot of people say that the 2 weeks after
Yeah,
radiotherapy is the toughest 2 weeks because it
yeah. So it's
obviously keeps
almost
building in your system and building. How was
exactly,
that
yeah,
recovery period for you? How was
yeah.
that?
So that's it's the same, yeah. So my I think the main thing once I kind of got the pain under control, and it was just then eating and just trying to maintain enough calories to keep everything going.
Yeah,
The only other thing that was a real problem was my neck. Like all the skin on my neck just went like burnt, like real bad, like sunburn. My neck all just peeled off, all just
yeah,
scabbed over.
wow.
And I remember the doctor saying to me at the time, he said, the thing is, what you've got to remember is what's going on the outside is basically what's going on the inside.
Yes,
And he said that the good thing is you've got a visual there, because he said as the outside skin heals, the inside is kind of doing the same. So it's like you can see that as your neck kind of repairs, like all of the tissues doing the same thing. So, and it was as my kind of outer neck got better, the pain and the discomfort started to then ease as well.
yeah.
So yeah, so the first 2 weeks nothing, second 2 weeks rapidly downhill. 2 weeks after were just as bad, and then it kind of started to ease, and then
Did
you
you
sort of
suffer with
slowly
any
start.
other side effects like fatigue or mucositis or anything like that?
I don't think so. No, fatigue probably a bit, mainly because of just eating, not being able to eat very well. Most of it was due to just not being able to get enough food in,
Yeah,
and everything just kind of tired and achy. Obviously, I
yeah.
was up during the night, trying to steam and things like that to try and help myself. So, like lack of sleep all sort of plays a part. I don't think I had any other. I'm fairly sure I didn't have any other like severe medical side effects.
Very
It was
good.
mostly just physical, as in just the you know being taken out by it.
So, Nigel, you run your own business, right?
Yeah.
So, talk to me about how your treatment and journey at this stage affected your work capability and what you did about all of that.
So luckily, I've got a good couple of people that work with me. As I say, I run the company, but I have a couple of engineers which do my site management and sort of on-site presence. Obviously, timing was quite good as well because as I said, because we were in COVID, things had kind of slowed down. So I
Yes,
didn't have a massive amount of work on at the time anyway. So it meant that I could sort of hang back and keep an eye on things, as long as I was able to make sure the guys were getting paid and doing the bits and pieces, then the project kind of ran in the background anyway.
right.
So I was lucky, really, that I wasn't full tilt doing everything, and I could
Yes,
actually just take a month or two to kind of deal with that. And it
very
kind of went
lucky.
through summer as well, so it wasn't a bad time of year to have to sit out in the garden and just sit in a hammock and zone out and do nothing for 4 weeks.
So, how did you go from, right? So, you've had your treatment. I'm guessing, excuse me, I'm guessing then you had a scan, 3 months or so after
Yep,
treatment.
yep.
And then talk me through end of treatment to the surgery. What what
Next
what,
bit,
what happened
yeah.
there? Yeah.
So finished radiotherapy, recovered, got through all of that, got released from Royal Marsden back to my ENT team for the regular checkups. The healing kind of went okay. Neck, skin, and everything sort of healed. And during some of the checkups, we noticed that my voice wasn't improving, wasn't really getting any better.
Right. I'm just plugging my cable in from
No,
power. So carry on.
and then I found that I was getting quite a lot of sort of ear pain, some other funny things going on. And it almost got to the point where, again, I was having to take like painkillers quite a lot to sort of fend that off, which
Right.
obviously is difficult because you could still be witnessing effects from the treatment,
Yeah.
because so much going on, you can't really tell what's what. And then one of the things that come up is, I think it's around November time
In 2021.
in 2021, yeah, so at the end of that year,
Yeah.
I went for one of my ENT checks and they wanted to do the camera. to sort of visualize what was going on. And because of the radiotherapy, the issue you have then is that your inner throat is quite tender.
Yes.
So they couldn't really scope properly with the camera.
Right.
They just couldn't get in there. My throat was just closing up, and it wouldn't let
Was
them
it swollen inside? And
It was just still tender.
right.
So whenever they tried to put the camera in, my throat was just constricting and letting do it properly. So I think my ENT doctors were of the opinion that obviously something may not be right, because I was getting still a lot of pain still, but they couldn't see what was going on to really kind of decide.
Yeah.
So they suggested that the best option may be to just go in and go under general anaesthetic again, and then they could go in and look properly to find out what was going on, because they didn't want to leave it and just see if it healed and resolved itself. So in January, just after New Year, I went and had another procedure so they could look properly what was going on, and then got a letter a week and a half, 2 weeks after that, to come and see them at the ENT, and that's when I met the main surgeon at St George's, who advised me that during the process they discovered that my cancer was still there, and that they deemed it as recurrent. So doesn't respond to radiotherapy, and it was actually still there and going strong.
Right. So radiotherapy actually hadn't done anything.
No.
Wow. Okay.
So that was at the point then when I was given effectively two choices. Choice number one was that they could look at alternative courses of treatment, I guess like chemo and things like that. But the issue with that is obviously I couldn't have any more radiotherapy on the area because I'd had full dose that you could have.
And it wasn't working anyway.
And it wasn't working anyway, yeah, so that'd be no good. They could look at other treatment, but the issue with it at the time was that it was still trapped within the larynx, from what they could tell. Obviously, the vocal cords are not fed by blood or anything, so they're effectively tissue that's not live.
Right. Does that make less chance of metastasize, or whatever it's called?
Yeah. So because it's on the vocal cord, it's not fed very easily, and it doesn't grow very easily, so it's very difficult to escape.
So it can't go metastatic either.
Yes, exactly.
So that's actually that's a good thing.
Yes, it's a good thing. But the issue is obviously as the cells grow in themselves, obviously they can get to the point where it would then breach the vocal cords over time. Right. And then once it gets into the larynx, it can then start to grow and spread.
Right.
So the issue with that is that obviously option number one would be alternative treatments, but potentially that could give me a 2-year outlook. Because obviously once it moves or escapes, then they already know that it's not treatable by radiotherapy, so you're then going to struggle to control it.
Yeah.
Or the other option is to have a total laryngectomy, which is to effectively remove it and all of its encompassing tissue.
And how did you feel when those two options were presented to you?
So it was a shock, obviously, with the original, with the initial, like, this is what's happening. Would be. It was a interesting one, because I'd already spent quite a bit of time, as anyone probably does, when you're sat late at night during radiotherapy with nothing else to do but stare at your phone. You obviously go down that rabbit hole of what ifs and where could this go if it doesn't work and all that sort of thing. So I'd already stumbled across the world of laryngectomies and all that kind of stuff. So I wasn't prepared, but I knew obviously as soon as he said the words, obviously laryngectomy, I knew I didn't need to know more about that. But it wasn't really a choice. That was the thing, when they present that idea of, we give you a choice, you can do one or the other. It's like, well, there's not a choice there, is there? Because one choice is 2 years to live, and the other choice is technically a cure if it goes well, but it's a big gig. So So yeah, I didn't really need to wait too long to make that choice. I pretty much said, "Where's the paperwork? When do we start? You know,
Yeah.
when can
And
we
if
take it
they
out?"
and did they tell you that if they do the surgery, they'll get a sufficient clear area of margin, therefore
Yes,
no other treatment required, just the surgery, and that's it, yeah?
that's the idea. Yeah. So it was. I had to go for a couple of scans beforehand, so they could be sure that there wasn't any spread or anything that had
Yeah.
actually got anywhere else in the body. But the idea was that the larynx, so it was a total laryngectomy with thyroid and some lymph nodes in the neck, which would be enough, hopefully enough tissue removed to eradicate it.
Right. And the lymphs were taken out as a precautionary risk
Yeah,
action. So in case
yeah,
it had gone into a lymph or whatever, right, understood. So
exactly. Yeah, because
how
even
long was
even
the
though it's
sorry?
yeah, go on.
How long was the surgery?
No, it's all right. Go on.
Yeah, how long was the surgery?
So I went. Yeah, so I got booked in pretty quickly, and I went into surgery on the day after Valentine's Day.
How
And
romantic.
I was in surgery for 9. Yeah, I was in surgery for 9 hours,
Wow. Okay. And how
which
were
apparently is
you?
quite normal. So
Well, it's quite a long operation. That's a long operation. And
yeah, yeah.
how were you when you came? How were you after surgery, and how was the adjustment process? I think mentally and physically.
So I I'm the kind of person that needs to know how everything works. You've I've met quite a few people in this journey now, and you've got the people that don't really want to know. They're like, just send me in and tell me when it's done, and I don't want to know anything about it or how the mechanics work or anything like that. And then you've got the people that are like, I need to know everything, almost to the point where I could go and do it myself.
Yeah.
And I'm that person. I need to
Right.
know. I need to be able to understand. I need to know what's going to happen. I need to know all of the details that I can. And then I can sort of understand it and break it down. So I pampered the nurses for the 2 weeks beforehand. I wanted to know everything. I met a guy that had it done, which they often do. They buddy up a patient so they can
Oh,
talk to
that's very
someone.
good. Right. Yeah.
And yeah, I was like pretty well prepared as to what was going to come. And it kind of helped me mentally as well. I think because I have that process where I need to kind of understand what's going on. I can then get my head around it to sort of know the best and worst case scenarios. Unfortunately, until you wake up after the procedure, you don't really know what's happened or how well or bad it's gone. So
Yeah.
you can just prepare for what you think should come and then deal with what comes once it gets there.
And how has it affected you, if at all, to be honest, Nigel? You seem very buoyant, you seem very bright, you seem extremely positive, which is a key, it's a word that comes up a million times in our world, and there's
Yes.
so many different
Yeah.
versions and meanings of that. But you do seem that way. You're doing a lot of work out there in the
Yeah.
world of cancer, which we'll come on to. But
Yeah.
how are you? Are you different? How are you finding people? And in particular, how are you finding that people are with you?
So I'm incredibly lucky. Um, it's probably the easiest way to describe it because I'm fairly sure that I've probably got the very far better version of an outcome. My procedure was as it needed to be. My recovery in hospital was like literally to the day of what needed to happen. I was in for 3 weeks. Everything went to plan, everything healed as it should do. I was given a prosthesis to talk with, which we can talk about in a bit, but everything's kind of worked as it should have. I guess is the easiest way to
So it went
describe it.
smoothly.
Yeah, so because of that, it's made it easier. And obviously, most of it's just adapting, and you can only adapt as well as the tools and the ability you have.
Yeah.
It's led me on to probably a different path than I would have been on with regards to health and fitness and everything else, which we'll come to. But yeah, for me, it's obviously not a positive experience because, the positive would be not to have it, but it's not as bad as others have it. And it's for me, it's now the norm.
Yes.
And I've been able to do pretty much everything that I used to, with the exception of swimming. But
Right. What were the struggles after the operation? Was it talking, eating, or what were the challenges mainly?
so you effectively have to learn to talk in a different way. Some people refer to it as learning to talk again because you're talking almost in a different mechanical way. Your speech is formed from your mouth mostly. You basically, with a larynx, you're just forming words from air, and your vocal
Yes.
cords vibrate to make the noise and the tone and the pitch and everything, and you form the words from your mouth.
Yeah.
So, provided you can get the air out, obviously the surgery creates almost like a false larynx type. It basically just makes a tighter area in your throat that vibrates,
Right.
to help you control the air. So my
Amazing.
speech, I sound the same as I used to, effectively, but obviously I've got no like pitch, so I can't
Yes.
make my voice higher or lower. But
Yes.
my accent, how I say my words, it sounds the same.
So you have a trouble, I guess, like shouting or projecting your voice in
Yeah,
a loud manner would be difficult.
yeah,
Singing?
I can get. Singing's not great. Not going to say it was great beforehand, but yeah, singing's it's one of those things that without being able to change the pitch of your voice, it's just flat. So,
Yeah.
and obviously just pushing enough air, basically sounds everything's gurgly. But
Yeah, I can
you
hear
know,
that. Yeah. What is that? Is that just air transfer or what
so
is
that's
that?
just the air coming through. Yeah, so the air comes from my lung through a small valve, and it basically gurgles through like a section of my throat.
Right.
It's very similar to it's like if you imagine talking, like if you imagine like burping and
Yes.
speaking with a burp,
Right.
that's the effect that you're doing. Your throat's basically vibrating like you burped, and you then form the words with the air.
How do you what's your summary of how people are with you in public or family or friends? What's your journey been like? In fact, let me change that question. What's your journey been
Yeah, yeah,
like
go on.
with regards to friends and family? In all senses, how good and bad and indifferent has that been? And also, how are people generally with you when they realise you've got, you've had laryngectomy?
So friends and family, obviously my immediate family and close friends were kept in the loop as to what was going on for the whole
Mm.
journey anyway. There's a few people that I probably know that maybe I have less contact with. Don't necessarily believe it's down to this, but in some cases they can be because people tend to shy away. They don't really know how to take it. There's people that I know that I probably didn't see for a good year or so afterwards, and then when I did actually see them again, they were like, "Oh, I thought you'd be much worse." Than they kind of had that preconception of what they think they're going to experience, and then when you actually see them, they're quite surprised. They're like, but my close family were always there and supportive, and knew. I guess they kind of knew that I'd do everything I could to get through it, and come out the other end as best as I could. So that was
And do you
always
find,
there.
in terms of like the general public,
Yeah.
I know that I see, I've got differences to how I was before, and I see people reacting differently with me when they notice that something's not quite right. Do you find any of
Yeah.
that, or what's your situation on that?
Occasionally, I mean, it's not too bad. I think because I'm quite lucky that I can vocalise quite well,
Yeah, you can.
and obviously my sort of immediate appearance isn't obvious.
No.
I think the thing I get most of the time, which I just ignore most of the time is people just come out with the comment of, oh, you've got a sore throat, or,
Oh,
you
yeah,
lost your voice, or something like that,
yeah,
which,
yeah,
in fairness, they're not going to know because, if I speak to someone for the first time, it does sound like I've got a sore throat or I've got a croaky
yeah,
voice. And obviously, if they're
yeah.
busy doing something else and then they look up and realise, then I just go, no, I'm all right. And that's it. You carry on as normal.
So to
Yeah,
talk, you have to
generally
press
not too
it,
bad.
right? To talk,
Yeah,
you have
so
to
I have
press
to
it. Yeah,
block off
yeah,
my airway. Yeah, so I've got I breathe through an airway stoma in my neck
yeah.
to my airway in my throat are now separate, and I just occlude my airway to allow air to go through a valve, which passes it through into my throat.
So you don't breathe out of here. You breathe out through your nose and
No,
mouth
no,
still, as
I breathe out of here,
you do,
but
right?
I block it off in order to talk.
Right. Yes, understood.
Yeah,
Understood. First of all, you know, it's quite. I've met some incredible people on my journey. I'm sure you have too, and I know we know some people in common.
yeah,
But you know, you're up there with some of the people that I speak to, and I think, how are you so normal about this? Like normal, quote unquote. You're. It looks like just when I saw just from my point of view, you've taken it on the chin, little punch on the chin, and crack on. No big deal. Whereas we know that some people crumble.
oh,
When the word cancer is mentioned, or especially when something physical is going to change to us. That's a big thing for a lot of people. But you're quite something, mate. I'll tell you,
yeah.
you're
It's, I've met a lot of people now, obviously through this.
yeah,
That have it a lot worse. And obviously, it's part of the reason why I've kind of taken to doing some of the stuff that I do is that, I'm fortunate in that I'm able to carry on doing things, but I do them almost to an extreme on the other level because, if I can get up and go for a run or, do some training, then it means that it's there to try and help someone else understand that they might just struggle to get up in the morning. So
yes,
it's kind of I'm a laryngectomy. I've gone through all of this. I'm doing all of this stuff, and at the end of the day, if that helps someone just get up and go to the shops or get up and make a cup of tea and feel a bit less like everything's the end of the world, then so be it. I'm fortunate that I can do a bit more and
yeah.
still sort of perform as best as I can.
Do you have you? So you mentioned earlier that the hospital provided you with like a buddy,
Yeah,
like a mentor or buddy. Are you out there doing the same thing for people?
I
Are
have
you?
done. Yeah, so I've done it now 2 or 3 times. So generally, if the hospital have a patient that's going to be presented for a laryngectomy,
Yeah,
they'll call on people that have had one to meet them or do a phone call,
yeah,
just to give them, you know, a bit of an insider. I think the problem is, as a doctor or a nurse, you can't really. It's very difficult to kind of give a patient all the information they need because you're not living it.
correct.
Whereas for someone like myself, obviously I've got the tips and tricks and things that you learn and the ways that things can be normal or not. And it's much easier for me to sit down with someone and go, right, you're going to find this difficult, this might be difficult, or, you can do this to shortcut that and give them a bit of comfort that
Yes.
it's not the end of the world.
Are
And
you
also, obviously, they can sit with someone and talk to someone that's got it, so you can see
yes.
what you can end up like.
Are you open to more people, to mentoring more people? So
Yeah,
the reason I ask this is if
yeah,
anyone listening, if you are anyone listening, can reach out to me
yeah.
via the podcast platform, and I can pass you on to Nigel to talk about any
Of
mentoring
course, yeah.
required. Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. So what else has this cancer world done for you? What I know you're out there doing stuff. What's going on
Yeah.
out there, Nigel?
So I guess it leads to like post surgery. as I said, I was fortunate that my recovery was pretty good.
Yes.
I I'd done a few sort of fitness things before this all started. Nothing crazy. I wasn't like a super athlete or anything like that. But I wanted to get back into trying to keep myself fit. As with anything, you're only as strong as you can keep yourself. So,
Yes.
trying to stay healthy and trying to stay fit is always a bonus.
Yes.
So once I got the clear from my doctors that I could, do some exercise and things like that, I wanted to get back into it. And that's kind of where it started. And I started doing a few walks and turned into jogs. And then I wanted to get back into doing sort of a bit more gym work. And one of the things I did prior to this was I took part in a couple of Spartan races, which is like obstacle course racing. And I wanted to try and get back into that in whatever way I could. But the problem with it is quite a lot of the events, they're a little bit like, if you like Tough Mudder and things like that, where it's kind of
Yeah.
like going over monkey bars, dropping into a water drop and all that sort of thing. So the problem is that's a bit out of my wheelhouse now because water isn't my friend. I can't really
Because it
go
could go
in
into there,
and
right?
stuff. Yeah, so there's no way to like stop me drowning basically.
Yeah.
So I ended up chatting to a guy that ran, so he actually ran like an obstacle course training place. And I went for a few sessions just to kind of get started, and I was chatting to him about it. And so the word High Rocks came up, which is an alternative sort of fitness race. So I looked at that, and it's quite extreme. It's based around 8 kilometers of running and a load of like sort of exercise platforms in between. So I thought about it for a while, and I thought, well, at the end of the day, if I can give it a go, then I'll give it a go. So I ended up getting back into it, training. I trained so if I had my operations in 2022, so I started the process in sort of August, September 22, and I think I booked an event for May the following year, so I had quite a bit of time to kind of get there. So I did my first High Rocks race, so I did a men's solo High Rocks race. So it's actually the world fitness of the basically fitness racing is a worldwide thing. Did that, completed it, fairly decent time, about an hour and a half, which is okay for someone to complete, let alone a laryngectomy, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I've since then done 3 more races. I convinced another guy with a laryngectomy to take part in a thing called the Ethics Games, which is like another fitness workout-based race. The guy that I partnered up with to do that has since gone on and done a couple of High Rocks races himself. With his sister, I think they've doubled up as a team. I've done the London to Brighton off-road bike ride twice.
Wow.
And I partaked in another thing, which is like a gym-based, like a virtual kind of gym league, which I done last year. And so yeah, it's all been pretty crazy, really. Doing lots of, I go out and run, train. I think for High Rocks, I was training for like 4 days a week, pretty much, like in the gym.
Amazing. And each time raising money for charity?
Most of them, yeah. So the first one I did for the National Laryngectomy Association.
Yeah.
One of the High Rocks races was for Macmillan. Obviously, the London to Brighton is the British Heart Foundation, because that's their main sponsor. It's the same as the on-road bike race, but this is the off-road one. And I'm now I've just started training again because I've had a little bit of time off. So I've just started training now because I decided to step up a bit, and I'm going to be doing the Brighton Off-Road Trail Marathon. which is coming up in April.
Wow.
I applied to do the London Marathon twice, but I've not got in. So on the Brighton Marathon weekend, they've now started an off-road version. So
Wow.
it runs alongside on the same day, 12th of April. I'll be doing 26 miles off-road, and then we join the actual Brighton Marathon finish for the last
All
6K. So
right.
it's on the
Wow.
same day. So I'll be finishing up with the actual main
Yeah.
marathon.
Amazing. And this might sound like a naive question, so apologies if it is. But in terms of breathing, when you're doing when you're cycling or running, is it different, harder? Is it challenging, or what's the situation with the breathe that side of things?
It it's different. Weirdly, and it's probably the reason why I've ended up doing this because I've ended up becoming like fitter and stronger than I was, like way fitter and stronger than I was before.
Wow.
And part of it, I think, breathing's sometimes easier. The main reason, obviously, I'm not restricted by my nose, and
Yes.
sorry, one second. I'm not restricted by my nose and everything. I used to have really bad hay fever and dust allergies, which have all kind of gone away
All right.
because obviously I don't breathe through my face anymore. So
Yeah.
the
Huh.
whole nasal passage has all sort of come out.
Right. There's a positive. Yeah.
So I can breathe pretty easy. Obviously, it took a bit of trial and error with filters and equipment to get the right sort of balance. Lung capacity, lung training, obviously, has had to come along. Obviously, the more running and exercise I do, obviously that helps my lungs, which also in turn helps me voice.
Yeah.
Because I think I can't remember the exact statistic, but I think as a laryngectomy to voice through a speech prosthesis, we have to produce something like 7 times the airflow. It's like 7 times the pressure to push the air through the valve than you would do through a larynx. So
Right. So the
effectively,
fitter
my
you are,
lungs
that
work
actually helps
7.
your speech.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Right. That's a
so
good
it
tip.
all
Right.
kind of goes hand in hand. Yeah. So I kind of got back into the fitness, tried to keep myself healthy, found that because of the way I speak, obviously lung pressure and lung capacity helps it. So it's all kind of gone hand in hand with it.
That's a great fact to know.
Yeah.
Nigel, I've just got to say, phenomenal interview. The best interviews, I'll say this a lot on what interviews. The best interviews are when I do very little talking, and I've done very little today because the
Yeah.
applause being yours.
That's fine. Yeah. Especially for
You've
someone that doesn't have a
spoken
voice. Yeah.
you've spoken eloquently. I think you've the message I'm taking from you is that even if you've got to have a surgery which could be deemed as, psychologically and mentally as affecting as a laryngectomy, which it would affect, I guess, scare a lot of people.
Yeah.
You made it come across like it's a doddle, and I think whether it is or
Yeah.
it isn't, the
No,
potential there is for it to be easier
there
than
is.
it could
Yeah.
come right.
My surgeon at the time, and I tell this quote to a lot of people I meet along the way. On the day that I was released from hospital, my surgeon, who's the lead head and neck surgeon at St George's, he came to me on the day of discharge, and he gave me one piece of news was that they'd got the results back from the tests on the tissue that they'd removed, and that they deemed that there wasn't any spread, and that I would be technically clear. So that was obviously a good event. And then he also sat down with me for a little while and chatted, and he said, what you've got to remember is that a lot of people see this kind of operation as a life-changing operation. He said, but what I need you to think is that I've not done a life-changing operation. What I've done is a life-continuing operation. Because the procedure that I've done is enabling you to continue your life. Because otherwise you would. And I think that kind of stuck with me a bit because, as I said, if it leads me to be able to go on and do crazy fitness stuff and live a healthy, strong life, then he's right. If I can continue doing that, then other people can continue in their life as well.
Has your cancer journey changed you, Nigel?
I think it has, yeah. Not probably, if anything, just my outlook on maybe not taking things for granted, being able to help where I can, if I can, like I say, like people that reach out, if ever the people from the hospital call me and say, "Oh, would you come and speak to someone?" or "We've got this workshop to do," or something like that. I'm like, yeah, whatever I can do, yeah, if it helps.
Amazing. Nigel, I want to say thank you very much for coming on.
Praise.
It's been you know this is something that's said to all of us. You look really well.
Thanks.
It's something that's said to all of us, and then we all go, yeah, well, underneath it all, it's not all as great as it looks. But seriously, you've come across fantastically. This has been a long time in the making. This
Be,
interview. Yeah, I'm
it's
really
good.
glad you
I've
have.
got
Thank you for
more
your
to
patience.
say from a year ago when I spoke to you before. So
Yeah, and thank you for your patience over the last week. But thank you so much for coming on. The last, I'd like to end it by asking you, what would be your three golden nuggets of advice to anybody that's just been diagnosed, either with the same or similar cancer or cancer generally?
so first one would be take everything one day at a time. Focus on each part as it comes. It's very easy to try and look too far down the road of, "Oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and then this is going to happen and that's going to happen," where you need to just focus on the first bit of the puzzle, because there's so much going on. You can't possibly try to break everything down. So
I agree.
you
I
focus on
agree.
one bit at a time,
Yeah,
solve that, move on.
yeah.
Second one would probably be similarly placed, but try not to let yourself spiral into too much like what ifs and obviously it's very easy to do. Everyone just grabs their phone, starts googling worst case scenarios, and it's all doom and gloom. But yeah, you've got to kind of it's to stay positive. Really, it's like they say, it's not over till it's over. But you've got to kind of just you've got to have the mindset that I'm going to do what I can until I can't. I suppose that's the way to think of it. And I guess the third one would be, and this isn't really like a cancer related one, but it's more on every day. It's like control the things you can control. Don't worry about the stuff you can't.
That's come up a lot. That's come
Yeah,
up a lot, that
because
statement. I
it's
totally
too
agree.
easy. Even in general day-to-day life, everyone starts worrying about stuff that's completely out of their control, and it's like, well,
Yeah,
you can't do anything about that, so don't worry
yeah,
about it. Just worry about the stuff you can deal with.
yeah.
Stay fit, stay healthy, eat food, eat well and stuff. Because everything else is just you can't do anything about it. So
I totally agree. Like I say, that's come up a lot.
yeah,
Nigel, thank you. Thank you very much for today. That was Nigel Skilton, laryngectomy patient or survivor or larynx cancer survivor. Phenomenal interview. Anyway, this is Hear the Raw. I am Paul Schneider. Thanks again, Nigel.
thank
You
you.
can catch us on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, and most podcast platforms. And thank you. On to the next episode.